Welcome back everybody to NorSpeaksOut. I'm Nor, and for those of you who don't know, this channel is all about African history and diaspora stories. So on this episode we are going to take 7 minutes and look at the history of the church in Kemet, that is Egypt, and we are going to consider the legacy and the impact Christian believers had on the Christian faith. So according to oral tradition, the Coptic church still hold that Christianity came to Egypt via Alexandria at the hands of the apostle John Mark, who was a disciple of St. Paul. So they believe this took place somewhere around AD 49, about 19 years after Jesus is said to have ascended to heaven. So we are going to run through 5 Christian leaders and teachers, theologians that I think are really important. There are many more from Kemet, from Egypt, but these are the 5 I am going to highlight in the video. So the first one is Origen. Origen was a native Egyptian theologian and scholar, and around the 2nd and the 3rd century he was considered by many to be one of the fathers of theology. He wrote over 6,000 commentaries on biblical text and was heavily involved in biblical interpretation and comparative biblical studies. The second person I would like to highlight is Dionysius. He was Bishop of Alexandria at one point in the 3rd century, and he, decades before the word Pope is used in any other part of the Roman Empire, used the word Pope first. Anthony the Great, who lived around AD 250 to AD 350, was considered by many to be one of the fathers of the ascetic lifestyle. So he was a native person from Kemet, but came from a very wealthy family. So after Anthony the Great became a Christian, he decided to distribute his belongings to the poor and chose to live this very simple ascetic lifestyle in the desert, void of any forms of indulgence, and to attempt to live a very holy and severely disciplined life in the desert. As a result, people like Anthony the Great, monasticism quickly shapes Egyptian culture, but also Christian culture. Monasticism was born very much in Egypt, in Kemet, and then spreads throughout the Christian church all over the world, beginning in Egypt. So even after the Edict of Milan in AD 313, and tolerance is granted to believers within the Roman Empire, many believers from Egypt, from other areas, from Syria, from Lebanon, from Jordan, decide to live monastic lifestyles because they believed this was the best way, or a true way, of living the Christian life. Alexandria was home to one of the oldest catechetical schools in the world, second to the one in Antioch, which is in modern day Turkey. In the school in Alexandria, students, theologians, scholars, teachers would come and learn the biblical text. They would study and debate theological issues, but they would also teach sciences, maths, and humanities subjects as well. 1500 years before the creation of Braille, wood carvings were used in the catechetical school in Alexandria for scholars, teachers and students who were blind, so that they were able to read and write. Athanasius is another really important figure in Christian history, particularly Christian history in Egypt, in Kemet. He was an Egyptian patriarch of the church. In the 3rd century, the beginning of the 4th century, a debate arose between 2 very prominent African theologians, one Athanasius, who I mentioned before, and Arius, and they began to argue about the nature of the relationship between God the Father and God the Son, Jesus Christ. Arius argued that Jesus wasn't equal to God the Father, but God the Father was above. However, Athanasius argued that the church had always believed that the Father and the Son were equal, but had different roles, different functions. So because of this very heated debate that was taking place predominantly in Kemet in Egypt, Constantine called for the Council of Nicaea in AD 325. However, believers, teachers, scholars in Kemet in Egypt had numerous biblical church councils before 325 and had those by themselves. And so Athanasius argued that believers always thought that God the Father and God the Son were equal. Athanasius championed Trinitarianism at the Council of Nicaea, that God was three persons in one, Father, Son, and the Spirit. And Athanasius was heavily involved, like many other African scholars were heavily involved in the creation of the Nicene Creed. Right, so that's me. I'm done. Please don't take my word for anything. Please look into this stuff yourself. If you are interested, have a look at the description box. There are loads of books and videos that I will link down there. Please have a peek. I'm going to highlight two that I would say are super important. Maybe one if we're on a budget. This one first. This is A Multitude of Peoples by Bantu, and then this one second, so Black Man's Religion, written by Usry and Kina. I'll put links to these as well. They are both really interesting books. Talk a lot about the church in Africa, not just in Egypt, but all over the continent. The early African church, they describe both. This one I would say is additionally, if you're only going to buy one of these books, I would say buy this one. He talks about the church in Egypt, in Libya, in Jordan, in Georgia, in southern India, China, so loads more all over. This one tends to focus a little bit more on the church and church history on the continent, but both are really wonderful, amazing books. Get both if you can. Have a look, and there are more books in the description box if you are interested and want to know a little bit more. But that's it, I'm done, everybody. Thank you for watching this video, and look out for the next one. That's me, I'm Nor, this is Nor Speaks Out, and I have spoken. And as always, I'm asking wahura, which means are you listening? Bye guys.